Elmswood Drive was the perfect street. It was quiet and peaceful. The houses were all well maintained with neatly trimmed lawns. Kids rode their bikes on the sidewalks. Neighbors chatted over white picket fences. It was the kind of street where people felt safe. They felt happy. They never locked their doors. The trees lining the street were old and majestic. Their leaves turned vibrant shades of red and gold in the fall. The air was always fresh. The scent of freshly cut grass and blooming flowers filled the air. It was idyllic, perfect. But something was about to change. Something dark and sinister was lurking beneath the surface of this perfect street. Something that would shatter the peace and tranquility forever. Mary Thompson loved living on Elmswood Drive. It was a picturesque street lined with tall, leafy trees and well-kept lawns, a place where everyone knew each other. She had moved there with her daughter, Lily, 5 years ago after her divorce. The move had been daunting, but necessary, a step towards rebuilding their lives. It was a fresh start, a blank canvas on which they could paint their future, a chance to begin again, to create new memories and leave the past behind. Mary had quickly grown to love the friendly atmosphere and the sense of community. The neighbors were welcoming, always ready with a smile or a helping hand.
Lily, with her bright smile and infectious laugh, had instantly made friends. She was the light of the neighborhood, always bringing joy to those around her. She loved playing in the park at the end of the street and having tea parties with her dolls on her front porch. Her laughter echoed through the neighborhood, a sound that brought comfort to Mary.
Life was good. They were safe. They were happy. The bond between Mary and Lily grew stronger with each passing day. Mary had never felt more at home anywhere else. The house was more than just a building. It was a sanctuary, a place where they could be themselves. She loved her neighbors, the quiet evenings on her porch swing, and the feeling of security that enveloped her every time she stepped inside her house. The gentle creak of the swing, the cool evening breeze, it all felt perfect. Little did she know that sense of security was about to be shattered. The peace they had come to cherish was on the brink of being disrupted by unforeseen events. It started subtly, a flicker of movement in the corner of Mary's eye, the feeling of being watched as she watered her flowers, a cold draft that seemed to follow her from room to room, even though all the windows were closed. At first, she dismissed it as her imagination, stress, lack of sleep. But the incidents became more frequent, more unsettling. Whispers seemed to emanate from the empty rooms of her house. Shadows danced at the edge of her vision.
Lily too started acting strangely. She complained of bad dreams. She refused to sleep alone. She claimed she saw a man watching her from the park across the street, a man with dark eyes and a chilling smile.
Then came the text message. It arrived late one night just as Mary was about to turn in for the night. It was a number she didn't recognize. The message was short, cryptic, and sent chills down her spine.
"They're watching you," it read. "You're not safe."
Mary's heart pounded in her chest. She checked the number again. Unknown. Who could it be? Was it a prank? A wrong number? But deep down, a knot of fear twisted in her stomach. She couldn't shake off the feeling that something was terribly wrong. The text message was just the beginning, the first sign that the idyllic life on Elmswood Drive was about to unravel. That the perfect street was hiding a dark and terrifying secret. The next morning, Mary awoke to an unsettling sight. The house across the street, belonging to the elderly Mrs. Henderson, was empty. The curtains were drawn. The car was gone. Mrs. Henderson, who usually greeted Mary with a wave and a smile every morning, was nowhere to be seen.
Maybe Mrs. Henderson had gone to visit her sister. Maybe she had gone on a sudden vacation.
But as the day wore on and Mrs. Henderson didn't return, a sense of unease began to creep in. And then, it happened again. The Peterson family, who lived 2 doors down, vanished overnight. Their SUV, always parked in the driveway, was gone. Their dog, Buddy, who usually barked at Mary from behind the fence, was silent. The street was eerily quiet. Too quiet. One afternoon, while cleaning the attic, Mary stumbled upon an old leather-bound diary tucked away in a dusty corner. Curious, she opened it, her fingers tracing the faded ink. The diary belonged to the previous owner of the house, a woman named Emily, who had lived there decades ago.
"What is this?"
As Mary delved deeper into the diary, her blood ran cold. Emily's entries were filled with paranoia and fear. She wrote about being watched, followed and tormented by a shadowy figure that lurked in the night. Emily believed the figure was responsible for the disappearance of her neighbors, just like what was happening now. She wrote about the figure preying on fear, growing stronger with every shadow it consumed. The diary's words echoed in Mary's mind, fueling her growing fear. Each entry seemed to unravel a new layer of the mystery, a new reason for her to be afraid. The more she read, the more she felt the weight of an unseen presence. She started noticing the shadowy figure everywhere she went. It was as if the figure was a part of her daily life now, lurking in the corners of her vision, always just out of reach. The figure's presence was becoming more frequent, more undeniable. A fleeting glimpse in the reflection of her window. It was there, just for a moment, but long enough to send chills down her spine. She would often find herself staring at her own reflection, hoping not to see the figure again. But it was always there, haunting her. A dark silhouette at the edge of the woods behind her house. It stood there, motionless, as if waiting for the right moment to strike. The woods, once a place of solace, had now become a source of dread. The figure seemed to be getting closer, bolder. It no longer stayed in the shadows but began to approach her house, inching closer with each passing day. The sense of impending doom was overwhelming.
I can't shake this feeling. It's like he's always there, watching. Every creak, every rustle outside makes my heart race. I feel like a prisoner in my own home, constantly on edge.
One night, as Mary lay in bed, she could have sworn she saw the shadow of a man fall across her bedroom wall. It was a fleeting moment, but it felt like an eternity. The shadow seemed to move with a life of its own, creeping closer to her. It was tall and menacing, with long, claw-like fingers that seemed to reach out towards her. Terror gripped Mary's heart. She could almost feel the cold touch of those fingers, even though they were just shadows. She pulled the covers over her head, her body trembling, her mind racing. Every sound seemed amplified, every shadow more sinister. She felt trapped, with no escape from the terror that had invaded her life. The figure, the diary, the missing neighbors. It all pointed to a horrifying reality. They were in danger. The diary's cryptic messages hinted at a dark force that had been unleashed, and Mary feared they were all its targets. And the idyllic life they had built on Elmswood Drive was nothing but a cruel illusion. The peaceful facade of their neighborhood was shattered, revealing the lurking darkness beneath. Mary knew they had to uncover the truth before it was too late. The next morning, Mary awoke to an eerie silence. The birds weren't singing. The wind wasn't rustling the leaves. It was as if the world was holding its breath, bracing for something terrible. She looked out the window and gasped. The swing set in their backyard, where Lily loved to play, was swaying gently, even though there was no breeze. It was as if someone, something, had just been there.
Oh my God, no.
Panic surged through Mary. She raced to Lily's room, her heart pounding in her ears, but the room was empty. Lily's bed was untouched. Her favorite doll lay abandoned on the floor. Lily was gone. Mary searched frantically for Lily, her mind a whirlwind of terror and confusion. She called her name until her voice was hoarse, but there was no answer, only an eerie silence that seemed to amplify her fear. As she ran down the street, she noticed something chilling. All the houses were empty, the cars were gone, the curtains were drawn, the entire street was deserted. It was as if everyone had vanished into thin air.
Where is everyone? What's happening?
Mary's house stood alone, the last house on Elmswood Drive, a beacon of normalcy in a sea of eerie emptiness. But for how long? As Mary stumbled back to her empty house, a glint of sunlight caught her eye. She paused, squinting against the brightness, and noticed something unusual. It was coming from the open attic door, which she distinctly remembered closing before she left. She hadn't left it open, had she? A sense of unease began to creep over her as she tried to recall her last moments in the house. Heart pounding, Mary slowly climbed the attic stairs, each creak of the steps sending shivers down her spine. The sound echoed in the silence, amplifying her growing fear. The air was thick with a musty odor, and the only light came from a small, dusty window. Cobwebs hung from the rafters, and dust motes danced in the beam of light. There, in the middle of the attic floor, lay Emily's diary, open to the last page. It was as if someone had been reading it recently, Mary's name was scrawled across the page in a shaky, desperate hand. The handwriting was frantic, almost as if written in a hurry. Below it, a chilling message. "He's coming for you, too." The words seemed to leap off the page, sending a chill down her spine.
No, this can't be happening, Mary whispered, her voice trembling with fear and disbelief.
But it was the sight next to the diary that made Mary's blood run cold. Lily's favorite doll. The one she thought she'd left in her room. The one she thought she'd left in her room. She distinctly remembered placing it on Lily's bed that morning. It lay on the dusty floorboards, its lifeless eyes staring blankly ahead. The sight of the doll in the attic, far from where it should be, filled her with a sense of dread. A cold hand closed around Mary's mouth, stifling her scream. She thrashed against the shadowy figure, but its grip was too strong. Fear, raw and consuming, surged through her as she struggled to break free.
It's okay, don't be afraid, you're coming home.
And then, everything went black. The next morning, the sun rose on a deserted Elmswood Drive. The houses stood empty, their windows like vacant eyes, staring out at the silent street. The swing set swayed gently in the breeze, a haunting reminder of the life that once filled these homes. The mystery of the vanishing on Elmswood Drive remained unsolved. The street stood as a silent testament to the darkness that can lurk beneath the surface of the ordinary, a chilling reminder that sometimes the most perfect places can harbor the most terrifying secrets.